from it, and we'll start in 3, 2, 1. Okay, hello everybody. I'm Lou Kerner with CryptoZ TV, and I'd like to thank you for joining us on the first episode of Personal Token TV, a conversation with thought leaders and the audience focused on the emerging personal token ecosystem. I'm excited to be joined today by Masmejean, who was previously best known for his involvement with MetaCartel, but that was prior until he recently, I guess, raised $20,000 in the Alex token offering. I look forward to hearing from Alex about that. I'm also excited to be joined by Bradley Miles, co-founder and CEO of Roll, the social money platform leveraged by Alex for his token offering, and they've done lots of other offerings. So, Bradley's got lots to talk about. And finally, we'll hear from crypto OG Eyal Hertzog, a co-founder of Bancor, and now focused on deWeb, a framework for developers to build decentralized online services. And each of our speakers will talk for about 10 minutes, and that leaves plenty of time for questions at the end from folks in the audience. But the great thing about Zoom is the interactivity. And we really look at this as more of a conversation than a panel. So please participate by asking questions in the chat function on Zoom, and we'll be adding people to the conversation, as the conversation progresses. So with that, I'd like to turn things over to Alex. Alex?
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Lou, for organizing this. Super stoked to be here with Bradley and Eyal. So I guess I can start about my background in crypto and how it all eventually relates to the Alex token offering, because as we'll see, it's a lot about community, creating your own community, which is the most important factor for doing a personal token, in my opinion, at least in the way that I did. So I was super interested in crypto ever since mid-2017, so a bit before the 2017-2018 bull run. Got super excited by the use cases. As a young person starting his career, I thought it was the lowest barriers of entry industry to enter in technology. And so it made sense for me versus, entering space, which is super high barriers of entry and lots of funding, or AI, which required a lot of data. And so crypto, and I thought, great impact in the world, right? Because better financial products, better governance with decentralized autonomous organizations that I can expand on later. And then revolutions of ownership as well with NFT and all of this non-fungible token movement. And so there were so many revolutions with crypto that I really wanted to be involved. And I did a few projects back in France for about a year and a half. But the real bump for me was joining MetaCartel, which was in mid-2019. So MetaCartel, for those who don't know, is used to be originally a meta transaction working group. And so to put it simply, meta transaction is to interact with Ethereum, you need a browser extension, usually like MetaMask, and you need ETH to make any transaction because you need to pay gas fees, which is a huge blocker for user because the drop-off rate is 99% with MetaMask usually. So that means like if you're building a crypto app, 99% of people will just leave because they just don't have enough ETH because you need to buy it on Coinbase or other platforms. It's just added friction for a simple service that you're providing. And so meta transaction aims to solve this by simply paying the gas on the developer behalf instead of the user's behalf, which is way better. And so MetaCartel at the time, 2018, gathered to solve this. And it was pretty much solved with a company called Tabuki, gas station network. And so once this product was solved, a community was formed. And so it just proves, and we can see this again and again, how community is so important. So a community was formed, a culture was formed, people became friends pretty much. At the time, I was still not involved. But start of 2019, they start to basically say, okay, what can we do with these kind of people? What should we leverage next? And some common theme was if we solve the meta transaction problem, it means that we are involved with the application layer versus most of the discussion that was around the infrastructure layer, base layer, Ethereum 2 research, etc. And so having this whole community doesn't really work in a startup or a small team framework. And when they saw in February Moloch DAO being released, which was a novel way to fund Ethereum 2 research and development via a decentralized governance system with a killer feature, which is the rage quit button, which means like people could just simply coordinate and deploy capital more efficiently than ever with the freedom of exit, which is an amazing feature because it solves the pain point of the DAO. You know, the DAO hack, which holds like 1 billion Ether in value in 2016, had the postmortem Medium article. And at the end, it says two things. We need freedom of exit, and we should have probably like traded on public market or like another thing. And Moloch DAO just came to solve these two pain points. And so seeing the Moloch DAO framework to help Ethereum 2 thrive and to fund teams, MetaCartel community basically forked the code, redeployed, and funded the application layer instead. So funding nascent Ethereum 2 applications at the very, very early stage. So typically, MetaCartel funds project between the hackathon stage and the seed round of a startup. So in between. And so we discover a lot of great projects very early that way by just having the community and having a collective due diligence of just showing up into many hackathons, many different events organized by Ethereum. So there are many apps that we funded, which is, I can cite a few, like Sablier, which is a streaming token app, or Minbase, an NFT minter, Ardai, a DeFi app for redirecting interest, and many others. And so this is around the time where I came, which is when they redeployed the code. They wanted to do a DAO. And so being part of the DAO was really awesome. So for the first week, I met everyone. It was really amazing. At the time, I was in San Francisco. I want to go back there now. And I really wanted to come, actually, to leave San Francisco at the time, to go to Berlin Blockchain Week, which was the biggest conference at the time, August 2019. And in 5 days' notice, I tweeted just for a joke, like, oh, if I had unlimited funds, I'll probably go to Berlin. And Peter Pan, without even seeing me face to face or anything, sent me money on a loan that he did. But Peter Pan is really benevolent, and it was really an awesome gesture for him, but he could not really afford it. And so he wanted the money back, yet it was really early, straight after the conference.
And explain, Peter's one of the founders of MetaCartel.
Yes, Peter is the summit of MetaCartel. So he was initially rejected by Moloch. Then he organized the MetaCartel community and redeployed it around the other DAO. Sorry for the context. And so he basically said, okay, I want my money back, but I know that, you know, it's just been a month. Like he told on Twitter it was a year. So I was like, okay, I guess I will tokenize your debt. So I will create Alex Masmejean loan 2019, and I will tokenize your debt. And so this was the first time I was tokenized on Ethereum, and it went pretty well because I did repay the debt like a month or two ago. And so it's a great story because I think I provided value to MetaCartel. Peter got his money back, and everyone was happy. And so seeing this, I then connected with Bradley because he was like, hey, you know, I'm doing Tri-Roll, which is a token for creators and artists and people with the community pretty much. And so you seem to fit the boxes because you've done this already. And so this was the first time I connected. And so this is how MetaCartel community related to this. And then, so other like milestone of the past year, I would say that I did is I became a founding member of Marketing DAO, which aims to grow Ethereum as a brand. So the Ethereum Foundation and Consensus are really focused on, you know, Ethereum 2 development, which is the biggest update that's super awaited and really expected this year to happen, at least phase 0 and phase 1. And so marketing was always something that we needed a bigger push. And so I am one of the founding member. We are backed by Consensus, and yeah, we are basically funding marketing campaigns to all types of persona interacting with the Ethereum ecosystem, whether it is traditional money or whether it is developers or consumers or just any types of people in the space. And so this is the second thing. And so this kind of grew also my community and some followers, and people started getting interested in what I do. And since I'm very out there on Twitter, I just got a bit more followers that turned out to be helpful for my token sale. And so then I created a basically group called under collateralized DeFi, a very complex word meaning DeFi loans. There is no DeFi loans, so DeFi, decentralized finance. There is no loans in crypto. You need to put collateral first because the system right now, most of them are trustless. And so this was before the wave of Maple loans, Union Protocol, and other framework that basically do unsecured lending. And so I created the group. It got some attention, some visibility. I learned a lot from the discussions from everyone. And then I sent out a survey on Twitter and I got many responses. So really also like blown away by my community. And basically I learned that many of the Ethereum community hold NFT and they wanted loans. And I was like, okay, well, as an alternative to traditional collateral, like Maker, for instance, Maker Vault being the most famous one, maybe we could have NFT as collateral, even though it's very experimental
Alex,
and very liquid.
And Rocket was great and interesting. We're going to have plenty of time for conversation at the end. Can you get to the
Sure. Yeah, so that's Rocket, and then that's my latest thing, which is get a loan against your NFT. Then, so the token sale is pretty much, well, reasons for the token sale, I would say I did it because I think it fits my narrative well, because I am part of the startup world a bit before crypto. And so I knew about ISA and income sharing agreement, which means giving a percent of your income in the next few years. And so this is why I thought this made sense. And the people who did an ISA, which are Mike Merrill and James Gallagher, two exceptional individuals, did this without crypto. And I briefly talked to James Gallagher, and he did not know about crypto much, and they had no reason to. And so I was one of the only few people pretty much in the Ethereum ecosystem who knew about this, who was young enough so that you can still pull it off. Because when you're 30 or 40, it makes less sense to bet on your potential so hard. Even me at 23, I consider myself probably like one of the oldest people to tokenize myself, at least tokenize my potential. I'm still kind of young, right? But and so yeah, so I was the only person to do, and so that's why I think it had some media attention, because it's the first time someone does an ISA on Ethereum, and versus the alternative where you create your own database and you do the whole money part yourself. It's much easier now. And so we've seen how much is easy with Roll Token just being a ERC20. And I just literally had a Google form where I basically say, hey, OTC me the money, so over the counter, straight to my wallet, and I will airdrop you a proportional amount of the token. And so I do a Medium article with some help of my friend Cooper, special thanks to him. And we basically released this thinking, well, this is going to take 2 weeks because there's a crisis going on and probably not the best time to raise funding, even if it's a small amount. And I was super blown away by my community. It took 5 days.
So when did you first said, okay, you know what, I want to do a token and kind of connect with Bradley to leverage their platform?
So I already had my token Alex, and it was already useful, and it's still useful for the utility element, which means that you can get an hour of my time. We can get to that later, but introduction to many subjects that I did learn, like for instance, DAO, decentralized autonomous organization. I have a lot of experience in the field, etc. And so you can already leverage my time, my office hours, my feedback, maybe perhaps my connections. I put this if relevant, of course, and other things that I could do, like hard skills. I guess I can do movie making, I can do other things. And so there's a small part, actually like a part of my token, which is utility. And so, yeah, the ISA part is because I already have a token. I don't want to confuse people further. I can basically quarantine 1 million token, which is 10% of my supply, to reserve those for the ISA. And so the rest of the tokens on Uniswap do not benefit from the ISA. It's like that special Google form was the one where I will airdrop proportionally to the people some of my income in the next 3 years. And so I just thought that it was just easier to stick to one token. And right now there's perhaps 200 holders, maybe a bit more, of Alex tokens. Most of them do not have the ISA part, and they can leverage it on DeFi just like anyone else.
And of the 200 owners, how many of them do you actually know?
I'm not sure. I haven't really I haven't done like due diligence on each of them. I would say I know a bunch. Because I created a Telegram group called Alex Wales, which has 60 people. I guess I know most of them. I gave some to my friends in small amounts for them to try.
Alex Wales, is it a very active Telegram group?
There's like 66 people. I guess I had a lot of questions today. There was a few, I had to clarify some things. This is where I update my articles and stuff, and I communicate. I guess I will create another group only for the 30 shareholders from my token sale. So my token sale was 30 shareholders. Some statistics about it is like the biggest donation was $2,500. The smallest one was $250. That was the minimum for the sale. The average.
Did your parents participate?
What? My parents did not. They were about to, but they just don't understand Ethereum enough. But they were about to, and I was like, well, I think, I'm about to raise it all. But yeah, they were, I guess if it took a longer time, they probably would have. And that would have been a fun way to onboard them to Ethereum. And so more generally, Tri-Roll and personal tokens platform are a great way to onboard to Ethereum because it's a fun, quirky way. Because one big thing about personal token is not to take it too seriously. It's hard to value myself. I'm a very risky asset. It's super illiquid. So there's a few disclaimers that say, it's nice to have fun with your community and try new things, but it's all a blank canvas. And so really hard to have insight about what will be right and wrong in the future.
Yeah, it's obviously early days, which is what makes it in some ways so exciting. But thanks a lot. Thanks for sticking around for the conversation later. And I'll turn it over to Bradley.
Hey guys, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you well. And if you're going to show slides, you can grab the share screen.
I'll actually share some links in the chat. But first, super excited to be here. I think what we're really witnessing is the birth of a new category. Some people are actually calling it, someone called it SoFi the other day for social finance. Other people are calling it an extension of DeFi. I think we're all really calling it the future, really a way to onboard hundreds of millions of users to Web3 and really start getting the use of crypto mainstream instead of the trading. So Bradley, I'm one of the founders of Roll. Roll really started as this premise that the economics of the web are increasingly bending towards creators. What does that look like as a sort of last mover play? Well, creators and their community actually owning all of the economics and making those economics interoperable. Ethereum, we think, is the way to do that. So we created a protocol, a suite of smart contracts, and a web app that allows anyone to really seamlessly create, use, and distribute their own personal tokens. We think the future of personal tokens actually has a lot to do with the community that you already have, as Alex mentioned, which is why we tend to use the term social tokens or social money. We think the long-term value is going to come from the community and other users and the utility as well. So Roll's really a seamless way to operate and sort of bridge Web 2 and Web 3. I'm actually going to drop some Alex in the chat right now so you can kind of see how easy the onboarding process is. So that's about 20 Alex for about 20 people. So anyone that clicks that link, the first 20 people can claim 20 Alex. I think as of this morning, Alex is trading at around a little over 1 cent. So it's about 20 cents in there. And after that, you can really check out some of the things you can do with Alex. So as Alex mentioned, he's kind of using the utility part of Roll as sort of a bit of a skill share. So you could see a sort of marketplace here. You can get a sort of an intro to some things Alex knows about DAOs and DeFi and sort of other opportunities there as well. On Roll at large, there's over 100 communities. So we've minted over 100 different social tokens, everything from streamers to more mainstream Instagram influencers and TikTokers to talk about in a bit, all the way to folks like Alex, other entrepreneurs, and folks in the NFT space. What's fascinating about this new category is we really do feel this is the thing that could bridge Web 2 and Web 3 while still sticking to the principles and philosophy of blockchain. So you have an asset completely owned by the community, interoperable with, let's say, a Uniswap or an OpenSea or any other Web3 app that comes along. The holder can exit at any time. And also there's a sort of a source of truth here with blockchain. The economics are completely auditable and transparent. We really think the future of this space, like this is such an exciting time, because if you step back and think about this as a new category, there's pillars that can and should exist. So Rolls created really a simple marketplace where you could mint, fundraise, and spend social tokens. But there's this whole aspect of curation as well. How should content be curated? Should Reddit or Twitter be reformed in a way that benefits a sort of a social or personal token? How can you integrate this into something like Twitch? Should there be an app that time releases social tokens based on how long someone's been in a stream? How do you integrate the influence and followers of popular musicians into the space? The most fascinating thing is you're actually onboarding entire communities with these types of tokens. It doesn't just start with the individual. So on average, there's around 50 to 100 holders of each token on Roll. There's about 4,000 users on the network. We're seeing tens of thousands of activations in a given quarter, around 4,000 to 5,000 per week. So social money earned and spent.
What's the largest or most active community on Roll?
Yeah. So it's probably some of the top digital artists on there. So Connie Digital's one. I'd probably break it into categories. Alex is one for sort of the crypto entrepreneurs. There's a lot of streamers on Roll, actually. There's someone that streams Fortnite and Apex Legends, Axie Infinity on platforms like Twitch and Mixer. They're always giving away social money to get people into streams and to just redeem different activities. That guy's name is Enforcer J. He minted Forcer. So there's just a ton of activity. One of the most interesting people on Roll is an Instagram influencer named Laurel. So Laurel's in the ASMR community. They whisper like this into the microphone and sort of give you this like tingling sensation in your spine. So I met Laurel at VidCon, and Laurel has never held Bitcoin. She's never held Ether.
Just because I know what Bitcoin is, but a lot of people probably watching this don't know what Bitcoin is. So just explain. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So VidCon is, well, first of all, canceled this year. But it's also a huge conference for the YouTube crowd. It started off as a YouTube crowd. Now, it's mobbed with TikTokers, and basically it's the place for social communities to meet online. And so before Roll even launched, I was like, I have to go here. So I went and I talked to everyone on the panel. I went to every panel, talked to everyone there, was fascinated with Laurel, the community she was building. And she was like, I totally understand this. I don't understand crypto. Can you walk me through the platform? By the end of the conversation, she minted what is now Tingles. And Tingles are single-handedly probably the most used social money on Roll. So with Tingles, you could choose Laurel's next videos. You could sort of get Tingles by subscribing to her on Patreon. She gives Tingles to her TikTok audience. And slowly you can see like how something like this can really reach the mainstream. I mean, Laurel has 250,000 followers on Instagram. So there's people pinging us of that magnitude that they're not familiar with the ERC20s, they're not familiar with Uniswap, they're not familiar with MetaMask, but they're into this concept. And this is fascinating to us because there's a complete avenue to take Web3 mainstream in this way. And I want to talk to like every entrepreneur who's fascinated by this and find ways to work together, find things that they could build that could really move this forward. I mean, we're first and foremost interested in getting as many people into the space as possible. I think we're kind of seeing a bit of a sewing circle going on. It's kind of the same people at the same conferences, having kind of the same conversations. And, I've been in this space like professionally since 2015, started at CoinDesk, and it was cool for the first few years. But, as we enter a new decade, You know, I want your favorite rapper on Ethereum. I want, you know, people like Laurel. I want folks that you follow on Twitch. I want esports teams. And Roll's kind of a mission to do that in a way that makes sense and still holds the values of Web3.
And so what's been the most surprising thing that you've seen happen, you know, using this social money?
So if you think about it, online communities have been around since the beginning of the web, right? Since blogs and forums. And I think one of the amazing contributions of the web is really it adds new features for online communities, whether that's like, you know, streaming or messaging, etc. And I think what this concept enables is giving communities new feature sets to engage with themselves. And so there's two fascinating things, right? So there's two new ways that you could engage in a community with social tokens. And so one is using that as a payment mechanism to represent, you know, that you're signaling to the community that you're, let's say, an influencer. So this is to say that, you know, if I want to give a lecture on role or sort of where we see the future of this thing, if I want to hop on a call, I don't have my own token, but I love Alex's community. I may want someone to pay me in Alex. And you may see that continuously for the next, you know, few years. You may see other people utilizing their favorite personal tokens across the web. And this is a new way to engage in a community. And the other thing is adding liquidity. So if you literally look at Alex's Uniswap pool, you'll see that there's, you know, nine or 10 liquidity providers. You know, Roll is an early one. I think Alex is one as well. And, you know, this is community-based as well, but it's also economic. All of these people are, you know, making fees based off the Uniswap trades as well. So it's pretty fascinating to see this like network effect, right? So you have liquidity providers, it's a new way to contribute, and also other people using someone else's token to as a form of payment.
Wow, you know, super interesting. So again, thanks Bradley, and thanks for sticking around.
Yeah, for sure.
Of the conversation for the hour. And now I'll turn it over to Eyal. Eyal's a little closer to my age, been around, started first company that I know that he started, and I know he did something before that, was MetaCafe, which was one of the largest video streamers, you know, back in the early or mid 2000s period. And then obviously best known for Bancor, which, you know, when I first saw Bancor, I was totally blown away by, you know, this idea of decentralized liquidity, you know, which, you know, we're now seeing become a bigger and bigger thing through, you know, not only Bancor, but through Uniswap and others, obviously. And he's always ahead of the curve, and now he's into deWeb. Personal tokens are a part of that. And so we'll, with that, turn it over to Eyal. Hey, Eyal.
Hey, very excited to be here. So, so yeah, I'm an OG, but I'm like a weirdo OG in that regard, because I always had my own thing with crypto. I'm coming from the consumer space. So really, you know, MetaCafe was a very large destination. You know, it was second to YouTube in a winner takes it all market, unfortunately. But
so close.
Very close. No, but to be honest, I'm so grateful that it didn't work out, because I would become an ugly centralized service. And you know, by being MetaCafe, I had the opportunity to be exposed to Bitcoin and to learn about it in 2011. And about 2012, I kind of decided that my biggest mistake with MetaCafe, which was that I didn't figure out the long tail. MetaCafe was a website for the best videos. So it was more like Reddit videos, if you will, less like YouTube. It was where you can find the best, funniest videos, great videos in different categories. I learned through the hard way that 99.9% of the engagement is in the long tail. It's not in the best of the best. It's if you look at Reddit videos, you actually go to those videos, there's not a lot of views. It's nice, you know, hundreds of thousands. It's cool. But But really the long tail of video was so much bigger. And I didn't want to make that mistake of not figuring out the long tail again, which is why as early as 2012, I started to think in terms of the long tail of user-generated tokens. And I made that post. It's like 8 years old on the Bitcoin Talk. And, that was the beginning of my journey that lasted until this moment. Many people don't know, but the only reason that Bancor was ever invented, the only reason that we invented those liquidity mechanisms that Alex is using today with the Uniswap is because we wanted people that create token to be able to make those tokens liquid. That's the reason that it was invented. Because we thought, how can you just let people create their own tokens if they're not going to have, actually we didn't say that. We tried that. That was the first company we started in 2012. The name was AppCoin. In 2012, it was operational for 4 years, and it did like a user-generated token system in a centralized form. For community currencies, it was not even on blockchain. You couldn't do that on blockchain back then. There was no Ethereum or anything like that. And the biggest problem that we got into, after we've seen some amazingly successful community currency being formed, and a lot of trade, a lot of activity within those communities between regular people, not crypto people. The number one issue that we ran into was liquidity. Was that at some point those communities will get to a maturity that, well, the token will need a price. Because, even imagine like a local currency that people are adopting, obviously many people in the community will have a lot more to give than they'll have to consume from the community, because there are, I don't know, rich people that have a lot of secondhand great stuff that they'll sell for the local currency. And those people have nothing to do with the local currency. So it needs to be liquid, and it couldn't be liquid. And that was what led me to kind of they say the necessity is the mother of all invention. I think that's really true in this case. So it led me to look for an algorithmic solution for liquidity for user-generated tokens. And that led to Bancor and the liquidity pool as we know them. We launched those in mid-2017. Not many people know, but Bancor was the first DeFi service online, like in a 6 months margin. And but I hate finance. I'm sorry, it's like, it's not me. I'm a consumer. I like to build product for people. So I was caught in the middle with all this finance talk. I don't like it. And the goal was to make those. And funny you mentioned it, Alex, the problem that you guys ran into with the fees, I ran into as well. So I cannot do consumer products on Ethereum, and I saw CryptoKitties becoming kind of the victim of its own success, which is like, there's nothing scarier for a consumer application developer as the platform crashing when his application is booming. This is like the worst nightmare you can imagine. And that's why we extended the Bancor liquidity network, not just to Ethereum, but also to EOS. Because, I felt that, first of all, I believed in multi-blockchain universe. I think that it's good to have alternatives for different use cases. Bancor was the first cross-blockchain service just because of that. And the whole reason we expanded to EOS is exactly to allow very simple, easy, quick, cheap creation and usage of user-generated tokens. There can be personal tokens, there can be any kind of tokens. And then we started to figure out how we do that. And that's a very complicated matter, because you have all those kind of compliance and regulatory consideration that we didn't even want to get into, because again, that's not me. I design product. I call myself a product architect. That's what I like to do. I don't like finance, and I don't like legal. Just not my thing. Let me build products. And my inspiration was ICQ, if you remember that, as to become an entrepreneur. And Alex, you probably
another fine Israeli-built company.
Yeah, that was the first instant messenger, ICQ, on the internet in 1997, and And it was the first viral application, the actual application that, ask you to add your friends with their email, and then it would say, oh, it's not an ICQ. Would you like to invite him? And you would say yes. And this is how it like grew to $400 million acquisition with AOL, like 3 guys from Israel. So it's been an inspiration for me back in the day. But going back to the story, so we decided to kind of build it in a different way that, again, the old people will remember as shareware, because we wanted to build a service, the user-generated token, not like a Google or Facebook, like a centralized service that you have like a one destination that you access the service from. We wanted to build it more like email. The thing with email is that it's the only online service that is decentralized, the most popular one, the most successful one, but it's the only one that is decentralized. And I even didn't think about it until recently, but the reason it's the only decentralized one is because it's the only one that you can build without a single database, without a single data store that everyone shares, because it's basically a messaging. But all the other services, they couldn't handle it. And even email could really use a central kind of data, not central, but a common, a public data store, because then it could fight phishing and spam so much more efficiently. But they were able to do that without it. But every other online services that we use since is a centralized online service. And deWeb is essentially the way that I chose to present this user-generated token solution to the world. And that way was by essentially differentiating between the developer, which is could be us or any other developer, and the operators that run it. So we release software to GitHub. Anyone can run it. And there's another class of marketer that only needs a domain, and they can be the marketers of that service, and they can market it to their own users that will use it through their domain. So you took the 3 things that any online service needs to do. It needs to build the software, it needs to host the software, and it needs to market and monetize the software. And we kind of separate it to 3 parts. And we say, hey, that doesn't need to be the same organization, and it doesn't need to be a single organization in each category, because we have blockchain. And since we have blockchain, so first of all, they can all share the same data ledger, the same events, because with deWeb, you write any event on the blockchain, and all the operators see the same ledger, the same journal, so they all see the same state, they all share the same state. That's the right way to build application, using a journal. And also, they all share the same network of value transfer. So it's seamless to transfer value between the operator and transact between all of them. So now you have an online service that you build once, but it can be operated by many operators, marketed by many people that through different domains. And whenever this application generates revenue, and I'll explain in a second how it generates revenue, whenever it generates revenue, royalties from that revenue goes to the marketer, to the operator that hosts it, and to the developer that build it, or many developers. And each one price themselves in how much % of the profit that I want, and it's a free market system. You can price yourself as much, as much as you want, because marketers will compete with other marketers, operators with other operators, and developers with other developers that provide maybe, a different set of software. So it's open market, and it's a way to build decentralized online service for everything, not just for email, for everything. Where you, like email, you have many different solutions, many different domains that people use that, but for every email user, it looks like a single system. You do reply to all, and it works. And that's what deWeb enables. And the first solution is really about user-generated tokens, because we see that as a very, very fundamental. Maybe it's my bias since I've been obsessing about it for 8 years, but we see it as very, very fundamental to what we're doing. And we created the token model that I think it's the best token model that I ever designed, and I'm so proud of it. And I'm really hoping that it can work, because it's the only model that allowed to create token that is, one hand, free to create, and on the other hand, it's liquid from the first second. You can buy it for dollars. And the model works with something that was invented before the liquidity pools, by the way, that used in Uniswap, the 50-50. Before that, and even before that in our white paper, there is the section about the liquid token, a token that is created with a liquidity pool inside it. And this token has a function called reserve ratio, which is what is the reserve ratio that it holds. So if BNT actually started as a liquid token, because BNT always have 10% of its market cap on the reserve. And market cap is like the price number, the total supply, of course, that in the contract. So that's how BNT was launched. We actually changed it because, you know, we became multi-blockchain and it's less ideal for that, but it's essentially a token that takes care of its own liquidity. You can put any other liquid token in the reserve. In the BNT case, it was BNT, but the tokens that we let users create here actually put USDB in the reserve. By the way, on EOS, there's a USDB on EOS. It's a stable token. You can put that in the reserve. And the reserve ratio starts with 100% in the first second. That's why issuing is free. Because if I bought 100 tokens, then I issue the first 100 tokens, there's $100 in the reserve, and the reserve ratio is 100%. However, each token issuer can define allowance. An allowance is the rate in which the reserve ratio will decrease every week. So the default is 2%. So within 2%, it means that the token reserve ratio after a week will be 98%. After 2 weeks, it will be, you know, a little bit more than 96. It will take 2% down from the reserve every week. And all that money that is being released from the reserve, because you don't need so much money in the reserve because the reserve ratio went down, it is actually going to the token issuer as something we call allowance. So as if the market cap of the token is $1 million, you know, that allowance will be, in the first week, it will be $20,000 because it's 2% of $1 million. And that actually allows for something like, again, like what Alex did, you can do that in that way. You can let people buy your token that is a stable token in the first second, but it's becoming increasingly unstable as time goes by. And you get a revenue from that. So many people believe in Alex, but you know, maybe they see that people bought it with $1 million and say, you know what, maybe this is too much and this is too much budget for this kid. I'm out. And as you mentioned, like the Moloch DAO, you can sell the token, and in the beginning, it will do nothing to the price because the price barely moves when it's 98% or now 96%. If you know the liquidity that you will expect from a token that actually has liquidity is something in the range of having 2% in the reserve or 3%, depending on the market cap. So this is a model for creating liquid token that is free. Everyone can create it, and we integrate it with credit cards, so you can use your credit card to buy directly. You know, EOS is like the you know, at the edge of being enough liquid. So, you know, they are in Coinbase, because this is the most important. What we need from a blockchain is cheap transaction, because every action is logged on the blockchain. We need that it will be liquid, so we can have, you know, people using credit cards or their Coinbase accounts to get money in and out of it. And we need it to have smart contracts, because all the revenue sharing and all the user account and registration is actually in the smart contracts, because it's fully transparent. So you know, you can make sure that everyone are making their fair share at any point in time.
Hey,
that's deWeb.
What was a major lesson that you learned from Bancor that you brought to deWeb?
So, you know, it's funny because, you know, the first company that I built was, I called it you know, it was centralized. It was a token platform on central service that was AppCoin. I've been working very hard on that for 4 years or so. And it was fully centralized, and we saw the limit of that on that. And then we created Bancor, and Bancor was not just the liquidity protocol. Bancor was a complete, very easy to use web interface into tokens, into blockchain. And I call this like semi-decentralized model. And I thought to myself, look, we'll be the hosts of the servers, and, you know, all the critical stuff is on the blockchain, and, you know, we'll host the server. But you know, in retrospect, I'm not sure that was a good idea, because I think that the whole magic of this industry happens when you have full decentralization. When there are things that, you know, Bitcoin and Ethereum and even, you know, the highest volume token, Tether, which is like, you could say those are like the success cases of our industry. They're all so decentralized in terms of their ecosystem, in terms of the people that, you know, there's very few success stories that you go to a website and do something. It's all like ecosystem. And I think I still carry the baggage of the Internet 2.0 with me when I created Bancor the way I did. And I, you know, in retrospect, it's easy to be smart, but I think the biggest lesson is like, you need to kind of decentralize everything from the first second, but it doesn't mean that it has to be harder to build it. It actually could be easier to build it, but that's how I should have thought. Because the end goal was not to build a financial product. It was to build an application that runs on blockchain that allows people to issue and use tokens that are liquid. That was the goal. That was Bancor was created. If you go to the talks and hear our pitches back then, that was the goal. But it needed to be fully decentralized in order for that to be realized. And I think that, you know, this is something that held us back at many points in time.
Hey, Bradley, if you were to think of the inspirations for Roll, you know, who did you really pull from and be inspired by?
You're muted, Bradley.
Thanks, Eyal. Yeah, so started at CoinDesk as a researcher, so there's just a lot of literature to follow. I remember one of Eyal's co-founders, forgot her name.
Alia.
Yeah, she wrote a great piece about user-generated currencies that we read. There's folks like Simon, as well. I butchered his last name, but he's from
Powell.
Sorry.
Powell.
No.
Simon de la Rouvière, I think, is the writer.
Yeah. Yeah, so there was just a lot of literature to use. And then also just the general arc of the web, right? So you're seeing communities want to invest in people, but not necessarily have the vehicle. So you're seeing, you know, companies like Patreon really scale and have this huge run rate. Even Cameo has a little bit of that going on as well, if you kind of dig into the platform. YouTube with their donate button. So there's no formal vehicle for humans to invest in other humans. And this is literally a route that many, many people can own. We're, I think, one of the first ones in the new decade kind of capitalizing on it, but you'll see dozens more, somewhat similar to your Kickstarter and Indiegogo. Like you'll fundraising is one part of it. Community is another part. One thing we continue to be fascinated by is the regular people that are reaching out to us. I just had a conversation with a guy that owns a pizza shop in the Bronx, and he's sort of talking through, you know, this idea that he has. It's probably not a good thing to do, but you know, these conversations are happening. There's a guy named Jeff in Madrid that's a tattoo artist, and he tattoos skulls on people, you know, weekly. And he just got into the NFT space, so he's minting NFTs, and he just created Skull with us, and now he's offering staking rewards for people that pull Skull liquidity on Uniswap. So the future is getting more regular people, Web 2 people, into Web 3 in this way, and the literature there has been super helpful, and just seeing that arc happen of people wanting to invest in communities and not having the necessary vehicles to do so.
Interesting. So, you know, Alex, there's been a lot of press written about you. Most of it that I've read has been pretty positive. There have been some obviously derisive stuff on Twitter. You know, what's been your experience of the reaction to your offering, and what's kind of been the most interesting, you know, people who have reached out because of all of the publicity you've gotten?
Yeah, it's been really great so far. Of course, there are some concerns, but really people have been amazed, and I did not expect this, to be honest. I thought this amount was perhaps too low to be recognized, but the fact that it was the first one that someone tried an ISA on Ethereum, and people were just basically imagining the different ways they can do it for themselves. And so a lot of people came up to me and probably came up to Bradley as well, saying, hey, you know, I want to do some kind of things as well. And yeah, as Bradley said, it's a whole new use case. You know, artists, for instance, like the use case of artists, they sell merch because music makes less money than before. But it's kind of a weird way, you know, of trying to monetize and engage your audience. Now, here is the direct vehicle. It's like you don't have to sell some, you know, third-party merchandise or other things, which can be great for some artists. But for people who just want their art to be at the center, having a formal vehicle is probably the best way. And so Ethereum is just the easiest place. So I would say people have been blown away because they can see themselves, they can see the space exploding. I saw a lot of other entrepreneurs probably maybe competing with Bradley in the future, thinking of ideas. I think the space is very unsaturated. Bradley has a great company, and it's going to be just a very huge space. So I guess, yeah, roll out the pioneers. I was probably perhaps the first one to do it on Ethereum, but it excited people because it showed a new use case that's going to be more common.
And Eyal, what are your kind of initial use cases for deWeb?
For deWeb, so you know, it's one of the things that I had on my site in the last few months, because I was looking for one, to be honest, for a long time. I was saying, you know, okay, everyone can create a token, that's great, and you know, actually, you know, listening to you guys, I'm like, you know, maybe we should encourage like ISAs like that in our platform. It seems like you know, seems like a very, very cool use case for that kind of things. But you know, when I think about it, I thought about, you know, what kind of the platforms that already exist that people use, but they're not working so well because they are centralized. And you know, going back to my talk earlier, if email was the only decentralized one, who is like the you know, and everything was built decentralized back in the beginning of the internet. What is like the biggest decentralized hit that failed? And the answer is essentially Usenet news groups. It's discussion groups. Discussion groups was big deal. I was using them myself.
I'm sorry, Usenet groups. Yeah.
Yeah, the Usenet, the discussion groups. And I was using those things quite a bit myself, you know, back in the day. And that was a decentralized discussion forum. And what do we have today? We have Reddit. We have, you know, for the smaller one, Facebook groups and other solution. And to be honest, you know, I'm not very impressed. And I think that there's could be so much more. Now, you know, interestingly enough, a few days ago, everyone started to talk about Reddit ERC20 tokens, which is, I think, a good thing, but it's a good, you know, a good migration path, because people will figure out, hey, why do I need to let Reddit keep 50% of my supply, and you know, and the value that is being created here, and maybe, you know, and those groups is the kind of stuff that can migrate. We saw even a good example for that. The Donald was very popular on Reddit. Now they migrated to the Donald.win because they become quantified or, you know, censored or whatever. And we see migration outside. And the model that I like the most is the model that you see on voice.com, where you actually pay money to upvote. So instead of having like a discussion forum with simple like.
EOS is, just for the people who don't know, right? That's EOS's social network.
Yes, it's you know, they raised $4 billion in a crowd sale, and so far this is what they have to show for. And
it's spent $30 million on the domain.
Yeah, for the domain name, it was an insane sale. Yeah.
Yeah. But I have to admit, I was inspired by the product itself. Those guys, I mean, it's the guy that built Steemit. He learns a few things, and I was inspired. It wasn't even their idea. Pixel Master did it before them. But the idea is that in order to upvote something, you need to pay 30% more than the last upvoter. So upvoting becoming something like a price discovery, and for what the last upvoter is getting some kind of a ad space, you can call it, or some kind of banner space on the content. So every time you upvote, it costs 30% more. And at some point, you would say, you know what, the content is not good enough.
But the previous guy gets his money back plus a profit.
So I'm saying that every time you pay 30% more, the previous upvoter get 10% more than what they put. So it's a profit to be a good upvoter. So if I'm a good upvoter to the level that someone will upvote after me because the content is really good, then I'm making 10% of my money from doing that. And 10%, it's out of 130%. So it's like 10% out of this 130% goes to the content creator, which is truly amazing. You know, now you have incentive to upvote, but also to post stuff, whether original or a link, but you have an action incentive to post great stuff there. And the last, it calculated 7.7%, again, 10 out of 130. So the last 7.7% goes to the platform, and in deWeb, it's shared between the marketer, the operator, the developer, and the one who created the forum, the admins. It could be a group of the admins of the forum. So everyone is making money from the price discovery of the advertising space of that forum, essentially, if you think about it. And then, you know, with deWeb, anyone can create a forum anywhere on their site, and anyone can access each one and upvote on each one because it's all connected, or everyone can see all the forums. So it's really a way to re-decentralize the discussion groups, which is, again, it's the only more popular application is email that does that privately, but really email is private talk. This is public talk. And public talk is centralized, and that's a huge problem for everyone, for the platforms, for the users. You cannot give one guy like Reddit the permission to censor information for the entire world. It doesn't work. It doesn't scale. Everyone knows that. They go to the Congress every other week to try to find a solution to unsolvable problem. And I look at this process of kind of decentralizing those monopolies online service. I'll show you one slide if you will. I'll share my screen. And there's just one slide from the presentation that I think is very relevant for that. Where is that? Here it is. So, no.
All right, so you grabbed your Alex?
Yeah. Here we go. This one. Can you see that?
And
Can you see that?
Yeah. Get up to 2 seconds of his time now.
So this is the network effect demonopolization chart that I have. And this chart is essentially showing you that every time we had a monopoly around a specific technology, then a standard came and demonopolized it. Now, you know, this is from my presentation, so I'm writing deWeb there, but deWeb is just a layer over blockchain that really enables that. And I think that's what needs to be done. We are living in a world of online services. When I was young, it was a world of software, and open source kind of decentralized that. But today we live in online services, and that's, you know, that's what I think we should do. And
that's a great slide, and great slide to finish on, as we're at the top of the hour now. You know, so Alex, Bradley, Eyal, thanks a lot, and thanks for the folks who stuck around to the end. Yeah, I think this was a great start to Personal Token TV. Look forward to seeing how the Alex token trades, and look forward to seeing the future work of deWeb and Roll. It's an exciting time.
Thanks, Lou. This was great.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lou.
Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure, Alex and Bradley.
Pleasure, Eyal.
Learned a lot today. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.